Welcome to the US AVD User Group YouTube channel. Coming up is the recording from a live online user group meeting. Please use the link below to become a member of the community and join us for our free monthly events. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Let's get started. And then if you have any questions and you don't want to ask during the recording, you can hold off till then. I don't have a spot where I'm putting these yet, but that's coming pretty soon. So we'll get that ironed out here shortly. All right, so the agenda. So I have not a whole lot of status. We've gained a lot of members in the last month, so I'm excited about that. And if you're referring people or spreading the word, I appreciate it. We've got some AVD updates coming, and then we're going to go into Rimo3 best practices for migrating applications. Looks like I have a random capitalization in there. I like to do that on occasion, but migrating applications to AVD and Windows 365 with Josh. And then we've got Windows 365, what's new and upcoming with Donna. So before that, though, I want to welcome Chris. Chris Cavazos is a co-organizer for this group. So I appreciate his help taking this on. And we've presented a couple times at MMS MOA together on May 4th, a couple times. I think both times we did, didn't we? Yeah.
Yeah, we did. We had a presentation on May the 4th, the last 2 years.
Yeah. So that's always been fun. Two Star Wars fans.
Mm-hmm. So yeah,
thanks.
That's an excellent graphic.
Yeah. Thanks for joining. And if anybody else is interested, there's still room. So I'll throw that out there. So just some expectations, treat everyone with respect. This is a community, so we want to behave well to each other. Be involved in the community. Try to make an extra effort to attend live. I know firsthand it's very easy to sign up for these, and then things get busy. But if you do sign up, please try to attend. Let's see here. Share the group, share the information. We appreciate that. The social media platforms are kind of dwindling. Some of very popular ones don't really have the reach as they used to, but any help is appreciated. And if you want to stand out, you can share your knowledge. It's someday I'm going to get a message from a user in one of these groups, because I've put this message out for this, and then the MN Azure user group as well. But someday somebody's going to reach out and say they want to try presenting, and if that's you, please let me know, and we can work with you to do a presentation here. Okay, so just some updates. The remote desktop client for Windows, there's a new version that just came out, I think, a couple days ago. There's some UI fixes, improved client logging diagnostics, and then there's accessibility improvements with narrator improvements and keyboard focus improvements. This I just found, I think the next two I just found within the last hour. General availability, the share VM images publicly with the community gallery. So now with the Azure Compute Gallery, you can share images to the community, basically. So it's not just within your tenant anymore. There's a settings community gallery that has to be applied to make that work, and it's available for both Windows and Linux. So that's fun if you want to share some images. There's also general availability for Azure Virtual Desktop custom image templates. So this allows you to build a base gold image or a custom base image. I prefer base because I always think gold images refer back to VDI with the link clones, but that's just me. There's built-in custom scripts, and you can add scripts built-in and custom scripts. So there's built-in scripts, and you can add your own scripts. It's a wrapper for Azure Image Builder, if you're familiar with that, but you can use it through the Azure Virtual Desktop interface. And then the images that you create with that can be output to a managed image or the Azure Compute Gallery. There's an FS Logics update. This is kind of cool. So now FS Logics, the updates for the FS Logics client on the Windows multi-user OS image are coming out at the same cadence as Patch Tuesday. So that FS Logix client on the multi-user images from the Microsoft Gallery or Azure Gallery should be up to date. And I also want to just call out the AVD community newsletter. It's at avdcommunity.com. They put together Microsoft community information around AVD every week. So if you're looking to stay on top of that's a good resource. So with that, I'm going to hand it off now to Josh from Rimo3. Josh?
Great, thank you. Just go ahead and share my screen.
Yeah, I'm going to try to stop sharing mine here. Oh, there it goes.
Let me know if you can see that.
I can see it, yep.
Okay, great. Let's go ahead and jump in. So first and foremost, thanks in advance to you, Travis, for the opportunity today and everyone that's connected in. What we're going to discuss is really best practices around application management, right? Specifically when we look at migrating to Azure Virtual Desktop or Windows 365 in general. Now, in today's landscape, it's easier more than ever now to build and to deploy cloud-based desktops, right? And that's solely due to Microsoft's advancements with Azure Virtual Desktop, including multi-session within a desktop operating system to ease the administration burden, and then of course the Windows 365 story. There's also the component as well too now to take advantage of the cloud-based offerings for the traditional application management planes with Microsoft Intune. Now, I'm a strong believer that desktops in general, will cloud or traditional, they serve the purpose to host applications. And what we find from our data perspective is that the applications do present challenges, right? For those of you that have dealt with applications, packaging, testing, they're just complex by nature. There's not one format to rule them all. They interact differently. They're developed differently. And what that equals is a tremendous amount of overhead from manual effort. And then we can quantify that manual effort to increasing costs to the support applications. And when we drill down, and these are just some industry metrics here that we're sharing, once you start to add all of that up and you have a sizable application portfolio, hundreds of applications under management, if not thousands, that you're looking to migrate from point A to point B or on-premise to Microsoft Azure, either 365 or AVD, the complexity becomes overwhelming. So in terms of the best practices and where I'd like to start off is, it's very simple to solve for that complexity that comes with migrating applications. The easy answer is automation. And it's intelligent automation. And but for those of you not familiar with Rimo3, we're a technology company. We provide a software platform that collects behavioral insights around applications and how they interact with Windows-based operating systems. And we leverage intelligent automation to do so. So how do you collect data? You need to install and test the applications. It's as simple as that. So what I'm going to walk you through here now is a best practice automation pipeline on how we can, accelerate that migration, right? Introduce best practices, mitigate our risks. And it all starts with the application estate, right? These are the traditional Windows installer packages, the AppVs of the world, the scripted files, the simple MSIs, the setup.exes, PowerShell deploy, and the list goes on and on for the variety of formats that you may be supporting. Now, the fact of Microsoft Configuration Manager, SCCM, large footprint, again, an traditional on-premise resource that you may look to, move to Intune in the cloud. But regardless, we start off with the application packages, and then we want to understand those application packages. And what I mean by that is we want to understand, right, how to install them, what they're doing to interact with the operating system, and then how to test and validate that they're working. So, the ability to automatically, unattendedly, at scale, import your application estate to extract that data to build the intelligence around each and every app that really exists either in documentation or in the application owner or SME's minds. Now, applications are nothing without the operating system. So we also want to understand the operating systems. And what I mean by this, I'm going to break it down into two phases. whenever we look at migrations, we have to know where we are today before we can move to where we want to get to tomorrow. So understanding fundamentally how those applications, again, are deployed and how they function and perform on that current functional working environment. So think of this as your, on-premise Windows 10 build that you're supporting your tens of thousands of users today. And why we want to marry these two up in terms of, extracting those data points that we want to use to, make informed decisions is not to determine if the applications are going to function. We already know this. This is what we're supporting today. But what we want to do is we want to build up that intelligence or enrich that data to capture a profile of what good looks like. So running unattended analysis on that current environment to gather all of those data points so we know what success looks like when we install the application, when we do, the testing of the application. And then what we can do is we can capture that as a baseline. And that's how we're able to leverage intelligent automation at scale to understand where we are today with our application estate. And once we've understood that, technically speaking, behind the scenes, it's just a collection of data. What we then are very strongly positioned to do is now look to the future. So now look at what that desired environment looks like for you, for your unique organization. And these are the AVD single and multi-session images, maybe Windows 11, as well as those Windows 365 persistent images. Now, it's also important to note that your images, whether it be AVD or 365, are going to be different in one facet or another from the next organizations. And, common elements that make the difference are things like configuration sets, security posture, GPO or CP enforcement, baseline Windows feature enablement, prerequisite applications, permission structures. Again, the list goes on and on. And when we're looking at testing applications to ensure that they're going to work as a part of our migration strategy, the majority of the time from our data is that if there is going to be negative impact, the majority of the time it's on the operating system configuration set, not necessarily the application package. So what we want to do is we want to run that unattended automation in a digital twin scenario specific to your environment as possible. And because we know from the previous step in the automation what good looks like, that's how we're able to determine if good or if something's going to break. Because in our definition over here at Rimo3, desired state, it's really just any change to this baseline state, right? Again, now delivering in the cloud, multi-session versus single session. You may be using your cloud migration to upgrade the underlying OS from 10 to 11 as well. And once we get to this, this testing or this desired state analysis phase becomes pretty binary at this point. We know what good looks like, so we're either going to get the same result or it's going to deviate, and that's going to reference a negative impact. And then what you can do, again, leveraging automation in this process, is take that error information that's a result of that unattended automation and make informed decisions. And you're armed with that data in the fraction of the time that you can comparatively do this, which each one of these boxes represents a manual step or manual effort in one way or another. So again, the value of leveraging that intelligent automation gives you that data result set very quickly and arms you to make informed decisions on what to do should there be negative impact. How do we remediate these? Do I have to update it? Does it go to the packaging team, the development team? Perhaps there's a third party involved. Again, it's arming with that data, which is vital in that assessment phase. And then once you've understood that from your application estate or the applications in scope, you now have data-driven results to accelerate those applications into the next phase of what your migration lifecycle looks like, right? Deploy them as is, maybe send a subset to UAT, put them in QA, staging, etc. Again, it's the value and how quickly you can get that assessment data that will pay dividends in the duration of the project, because unfortunately what we've seen is understanding negative impact too far down the migration lifecycle tends to create a bottleneck or stalls out the overall migration strategy. What this also does, so, at this point within the automation pipeline, we've via data determined what applications we can deploy as is, and that's great. Now we also have the ability, specifically with AVD and MSIX or Windows 365 and Intune, to now look or start to look for opportunities to modernize these legacy Windows packages to take advantage of the latest and greatest that Windows 365 and AVD offers. So within the same intelligent automation pipeline, the ability then to assess these applications without investing or exhausting manual effort. The only other way to do it is to go through the hundreds, if not thousands, of applications and try to package them into something like MSIX, or validate that they work on your new Intune image and then wrap them in Intune Win to be delivered to 365. There are capabilities to leverage automation, and then that's great. I'll use MSIX, for example, to deliver via AVD app attach. That's fantastic. We can run some intelligent automation, return the data-driven results back to determine what are good candidates. And the only way to do that, as I mentioned, is to actually attempt to package it. And if you are able to achieve that new modern package, that's great. That's half the battle. However, that's verifying or validating that you can take a MSI and put it into an MSIX container. What it's not validating is that will that MSIX now function and perform as you would expect it to based off of your baseline data. So there's a post-conversion or modernization validation exercise that becomes mandatory. You have to validate that. And how do you validate it? You test it. Leverage automation to do that, all within the same automation pipeline. And should you be able to achieve success, fantastic. Again, the same rules apply, retrieving that error data as quickly as possible so that you have leeway to make those informed decisions on alternative delivery mechanisms, application package remediation, configurations to the OS, if you will. And then again, the last component here with the automation is then to export those into the modern management planes that are available in the cloud to help us manage those applications for deployment and ongoing maintenance. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to pause for a second, open it up if there's any questions. I can't see the chat, so if there are, if someone could audible them to me. If not, I'm just going to transition over to the Rimo3 platform.
I have a question. How long does that discovery process normally last?
100% dependent on the number of applications.
Okay.
So typically, at least from the Rimo3 perspective, again, based on complexity and size of the package, it's about 1 to 3 minutes per application to gather the initial data that we require.
Okay, thanks.
Sure. I just switched screens over there. Quick audio visual check there. Are you able to see the Rimo3 technology?
I can, yep.
Fantastic. And I'll only take a couple minutes here, but certainly would be more than happy to follow up individually, provide deep dives, understand what your environment looks like, your migration plan, et cetera. But these are the data-driven results that I was talking about that are the outcome from that intelligent automation process that we were whiteboarding out there. In terms of the Rimo3 product specifically, we do provide out-of-the-box AVD and Windows 365 suitability analytics support. And we've already done all of the discovery of the application. We've baselined it, so we know what that successful outcome looks like. Now what we're doing is we're taking all of that data that we've learned and we're executing it in a dynamic analysis. So I'll just kind of double click in here, and we break it down to 3 primary buckets. And I'm looking at AVD for the example purposes today. The first bucket is what we defined as AVD as is. Now this is running on that AVD image in a persistent context, but you can see all of the orchestration that the automation is driving. So the ability then 100% unattended and at scale to spin up that AVD image based off your configuration sets, deploy that application based off your deployment logic, and then dynamically test that application based off of what was automatically discovered in the previous steps, and then uninstall the application, deprovision the virtual environment, move on to the next application. Outside of the log level that app nerds like myself like to gravitate to, there are capabilities for video recording, static screenshot analysis as well, and then again the ability to capture performance metrics, not only on the baseline, but let's change the baseline and see if the performance has deviated as well. So outside of the AVD as is, there's also multi-session testing capabilities. And the nice part about the Rimo3's patented IP is that there's no administration overhead. We're not writing scripts. We're not making assumptions about all of these applications, COTS apps, or third party. We're allowing the automation and the technology to determine all of this for us. So then what we can do is apply that directly in a multi-session context to now start to take advantage of AVD at its fullest. And again, because we understand what that outcome looks like from our baseline analysis, we can now start to provide impact analysis should we want to run these applications in a multi-session context. And then the last bucket here is that package format modernization. So you'll see it's an iterative based approach where we're validating. I can take the apps as is. I can run them in a persistent context. I can still take the same apps and run them in a multi-session context. What if I change the package format to MSIX? And that's exactly what Rimo3 is including within their automation pipeline, is the ability to do that at batch and at scale, where we can now start to sift through the data-based results and understand what can be MSIXed, what can't, what can be MSIXed, but does not function as we would expect it to. And then, of course, what can be converted and passes successfully for that post-conversion. And if you can check the box in all three of those buckets, you've now identified via data that you have great candidates for MSIX app attach. You have great candidates now to deploy these to either Windows 365 or AVD in this particular example. So let's leverage the automation even further and start to export these validated packages, either in MSIX or Intune Win, depending on where they're going to live. Let's export those automatically to the next modern management plane. And we can facilitate that again through that unattended process. So I'm going to pause there. That's what I had planned for the demonstration agenda. But if there are any questions or comments?
How is this priced?
It's a great question. We price per end user. So we align very closely to Microsoft and their licensing model. And we scope it out that way. And why we do it per user is because we're aligned very closely to the AVD and 365 market. But also, too, we do not want to restrict the number of applications or the number of tests that you may choose to run. So we align directly to like the AVD and Windows 365 pricing.
What more does this? Not too long ago, I was playing with the MSIX packager from Microsoft, and I just, what more does this bring to that? I had not such a great experience with it, but so I'm just kind of curious, does this do more for me? It goes deeper, or I hope that's kind of making sense.
No, it does. And the answer is, the high level answer is no. So what we've done is we've worked very closely with the Microsoft MSIX team. We've embedded the native Microsoft MSIX packaging tool, the CLI version, underneath the hood of our automation engine. So what we're doing is we're gleaning that installation logic and behavioral insights. We're capturing that, and then we're just automating that conversion process. So I think where you were going is, can we apply fix-ups? Does it have any auto remediation? And the answer is simply, from a Rimo3's perspective, no. Our value is in automating at scale and then making those decisions on what apps need to be remediated. And there's a lot of good tools out there to apply the fix-ups and to help with that analysis.
Okay.
Good question.
Thank you.
Yeah, you got it.
Any other questions? That was great information. It's the application story is a big part of AVD and Windows 365 and corporate computing for that matter. So it's good to see how that automates the process.
Great. Well, thank you again, and I will pass it over to back to Travis and or Donna.
All right. Yeah, I'll thanks, Josh, and I'll hand it off to Donna.
Well, hello. Sorry, hello everybody. I'm Donna Ryan. I'm assuming that my audio is coming through clear.
I can hear you. Yep.
Awesome. So let me go ahead and get my my slide deck pulled up. Actually, let me do the screen share first. There's an order of operations to these sort of things. I'm going to go to share. Oh, and then let me go ahead and then I'll throw up a PowerPoint and then I'll start blathering on about Windows 365. So I am on the Windows 365 team at Microsoft. Specifically, I'm a CAT PM. If you don't know what that is, that's quite all right. CAT is one of the many Microsoft acronyms. It happens to stand for Customer Acceleration Team. So what my function is as part of the product group is to talk to customers, find out, to get their feedback, find out what's preventing them from deploying the services that we're attached to, me being Windows 365. But what's really cool though is AVD and Windows 365 are now part of one family. The WCX team stands for Windows Cloud Experience. So that's why I'm here at the AVD group. I used to work with AVD when I was a field consultant with CDW. So very familiar with that fantastic solution. Loved working with it. But once I saw Windows 365, it's like, oof, that's the easiest way I've ever seen to deploy Windows. So anyway, enough about me and my job title. I'm here to talk Windows 365, what's new and upcoming. I am perfectly fine with people just throwing out questions, just coming off and mute. I can't see the chat, so if Travis, somebody pops up and doesn't want to come off microphone to ask, that's totally cool. But I am perfectly fine taking questions as they come. So without further ado, I'm going to kind of go into the presentation. I've got it broken down by major categories. So we're going to first look at the user experiences. There have been a lot of changes to Windows 365 within the last 9 months, give or take, which is kind of what I loosely based this presentation around. Earlier this year, might have even been late last year, it was announced that Windows 365 Boot, Windows 365 Switch, and Windows 365 Offline were going to be a thing. Boot and Switch actually just, I think, just went GA today, as a matter of fact. So I'm going to kind of dive into those a little bit. Offline, that is in and of itself a ton of work spread across multiple teams at Microsoft. So that one's not ready yet. When is it going to be? I wish I knew, but that's going to be cool. So anyway, let's talk about Boot. So Windows 365 Boot, what it does is it essentially converts a Windows 11 physical machine into almost a thin client. When you go through the process, it will leverage autopilot, configuration files, provisioning policies to convert the machine over into this mode, with the idea that when a user logs into it, it then connects to the cloud PC, and then that's it. There isn't any actual access to the physical operating system. So, one of the initial intended use cases for this feature is for shared machines or kiosk style. So for hot desking, you can just have a physical machine there configured for boot, and whatever user can log into it, and then they connect to their own cloud PC. So what I've got shown on the screen here, the left-hand side was pulled from the docs to kind of give you the shared scenario idea, but it doesn't have to be shared. It can still be an individually assigned physical machine, so it doesn't have to be. And it can, but generally speaking, it can kind of be used in the place of a thin client. So some of your caveats though is it does require a Windows 11. I don't know if there's an intent to make it backported. Probably not. This was when it was in public preview, it required the insider build of Windows 11. That's where the bits to make all this magic happen were. But now there's a new version of Windows 11 announced, so that will be included in there. And if you want to get started with boot within your Windows 365 devices pane, you can see in the overview, I've circled it in the red. There is a guide that actually walks you through. It's pretty straightforward. It's going to ask you, for naming templates, your join, VPN, Wi-Fi profiles, that kind of fun stuff. Yeah, pretty autopilot-y type of questions. And then you let it, you apply your policy. It'll you reset the machine and turn it into boot, and then off it goes. So if that sounds like something that could be of interest to you or your organization, please go check that out. The other one is Switch. And so what Switch does is it works with the Windows 365 app available from the store. What Switch allows you to do is to connect a cloud PC to your physical, but instead of having to, like, if you're using like the AVD client, like go in and keep track of where your icon is, you can just with a 3-finger swipe, you can swap back and forth between Switch, or between your your physical desktop and the cloud PC desktop. You can also pin the desktop, your cloud PC, to your taskbar. So instead of having to open the app, wait for your feeds to refresh, you can just go ahead and fire it off right from the taskbar, and then you can do a simple gesture swap back and forth. It'll also show the cloud PC desktop in the task view, so that can just be part of your regular workflow. Yeah, so this is great for folks that maybe rocking like single monitor. I was rocking 4, so I really had no need, but it's absolutely useful for those types of scenarios. Again, definitely worth checking it out. That is a window, and I'm again pretty certain that's a Windows 11 only feature. There's some other user experience features that have come out within the last 6 months or so. The location redirection one I think is my favorite, because when you're connecting to your cloud PC, it's going to physically reside in some Microsoft data center somewhere. So my example, I live in Michigan. My cloud PC lives physically in Virginia. So you go and log in and you get the little weather widgets and it say, oh, here's what's going on in Richmond, Virginia. Well, I don't live there. So the location redirection is designed to do is to take the detected location where the end user is and then pass that to the cloud PC. So when you're requesting any type of data that has localization, it's actually accurate for the end user. Pretty cool stuff. I think that's neat. For folks that are doing connecting over your web portal and doing you're not using any of the agents or the clients, we now support the web client. So for your Teams, Teams video calling, we now support that through the browser. And actually, this last one here is pretty neat too. Is your web client keyboard redirection. So essentially, what that means is if you were doing like an Alt Tab, the operating system on the physical machine would intercept that keystroke, and then would start cycling through its tabs like it would, even though you intended it to be on the cloud PC. So now with the keyboard redirection, with that's configured, that allows your end users to be able to use standard keystrokes and have them not be intercepted by the physical machine. So some good quality of life stuff there. But it's not where there's the quality of life stuff isn't where the fun the fun stops. We actually have new devices and form factors that are supporting Windows 365, which I think is really neat. I'm hoping at least there's some Windows Phone fans out there. If anybody remembers the Continuum feature that the HP version of Windows 10 Phone had, where you could plug the phone into the dock, and then now you're running your phone OS on your screen. Well, that's almost how this works, except for what this does is when you plug the monitor into the phone, it will connect to your cloud PC. So you can still use your phone as a phone, but the experience on the monitor is actually Windows. It's not the mobile app. So very handy for road warriors. Motorola and Lenovo partnered with this one. Motorola is doing the manufacturing, but it's a Lenovo style phone, so that's why it's got the Think branding. I think it still has the little rubber red button, typical Lenovo style. But for road warriors, people are tired of lugging backpacks around. Unfortunately, they haven't handed those out to every one of the folks in the product group to evaluate. Because, honestly, I would really consider just ditching everything and carrying the phone if it could do both. Maybe that and an external monitor and a Bluetooth keyboard. But that's a really slick way of connecting in. We're hoping other vendors kind of pick up on this. The connection, the software to connect in was created by the OEM and not specifically by us. So it's not a full all Androids can do that yet. So it's still early days. But
yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Is how's the feature parity with the client? Is it pretty close?
I think it's
compared
pretty
to the Windows, the full client.
So it's running Android. So I haven't used it. So, if it's, and I would assume it's built largely on top of the Android client, which doesn't have feature parity yet. So, honestly, I really don't know. I would assume that it's pretty close, but
pretty close.
But
yeah.
again, is an assumption.
Yeah.
Still pretty cool. Still pretty cool from a concept of being able to connect to Windows anywhere directly from your phone. And being able
I do remember Continuum, and that was one of the coolest features I've ever seen in a phone. So,
yeah.
If they just could have got it into a Verizon or AT&T store, it would have been popular.
I think so.
Dex is pretty sweet too.
Which one?
Samsung Dex.
Okay. The same principle.
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay. So if connecting from your phones is not your jam, LG has introduced a productivity line of apps in their web OS. I'm sorry I couldn't find a better representation of this, but there's actually now within, I think it's version 23 of web OS, there's actually a Windows 365 app. And so you can Bluetooth connect in your keyboard or mouse to the television and then connect in. So you could just use your LG TV as a thin client, which is also pretty neat. So it's not just Windows 365 isn't just pigeonholed to the typical traditional form factors. It's starting to show up on lots of different things. So I think that's pretty darn exciting. Now, for folks that are still on Citrix and VMware, have no intention of leaving, which but those two have been Microsoft partners for years and years and years. So no need to cut them out. But that the value prop of Windows 365, the ease of deployment, the ease of management, we wanted to be able to bring that to folks that are still within partner ecosystems. And so we have built connectors into both of the services. The VMware one just came out within the last month. Citrix has, I think, been in public preview for quite a while, and it may have even gone GA at this point. So what this allows you to do is it allows you to provision cloud PCs and have users access them through their respective third-party clients. So through Citrix, what do they call that now? It used to be whatever the Citrix client is called these days. I forget the name of it. And then through VMware Horizon client, you can connect into your cloud PC. So it just shows up along with the rest of their published resources. It can also leverage those third-party protocols. So big fan of HDX, cool. You can go ahead and rock Citrix and connect in your cloud PC. If you prefer Blast Protocol, VMware, you can connect on in. There are caveats to that, of course. The deployment and management of the cloud PCs and all of that is still done through Intune. That is not being done through the partner portals of the partner services. So if that's something that you're interested in, you might want to just double check those caveats. I want to say VMware is hybrid join only, but don't quote me on that one. But I'm fairly certain that that's the case. So, if you're on those platforms and you want to be able to give Windows 365, but you don't want to roll out new clients, or don't want to retrain folks on where to go get their stuff, we've got connectors set up that can allow you to tie those services together.
Is there a fee associated? Is there a fee associated with using those connectors? I would assume so.
Not from Microsoft, but you'll pay the Citrix and the VMware taxes for those particular services.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. So we've been very busy on networking, and quite honestly, working with customers, networking is usually where about 90% of the troubles live. Sorry, we're big fans of the Microsoft hosted network, because you just take networking out of the equation and it just magically functions. But if you're using an ANC, an Azure Network Connection, and you're managing VNets, we've got some really cool options here. So what we've brought this year is we've modified the privileges / permissions that the service needed in order to function. When we first published Windows 365, the network contributor role was required in order to create your Azure network connection. And some customers rightly said, hey, that role has way more permissions than it rightly needs. That's a security concern. It was, yeah, you're right. Over permissioning is never a good idea. So we actually did the legwork to find out what specific components of that role the service needed, and came up with 2 new roles. So that's what now the service is using. So now the service only has the amount of permissions that it needs in order to function, which it's always nice when you can make the security folks happy and not break anything while you're at it. So we've got that one. While still on the topic of ANCs, and for folks that may not know, an ANC largely represents a VNet. So when you're deploying resources in Windows 365 and you create the Azure network connection, it's going to ask you which VNet do you want to use, and then there's some other odds and ends questions that go into that, like your But historically, when you create your provisioning policy, which is what is really how you build cloud PCs. Provisioning policy allows you to select which image you're going to use, which join type. Like you can see here, you got Azure AD and hybrid. Historically, we're tied to one Azure network connection. So if something happened on that network connection, you get an error, and the Windows 365 service has a watchdog service that looks and periodically tests the network connections to make sure they're still functioning. So if you had an error there for any reason while you were provisioning failed, which is never a good look. So we can now tie multiple ANCs into provisioning policy instead of priority. And so this is neat from the perspective of, well, a couple. One is it's nice from an implementation perspective. So if something does happen to your primary region, it'll still go ahead and provision. But see, what's also cool is we've had this happen with multiple customers. Is when they started their journey, they said, okay, we're going to carve out our subnet for Windows 365. And I said, yeah, how many IP addresses do we have? We've got enough. Okay, great. So they start, provisioning, and they find out, wow, this service is really cool. And then they realize, oh crap, we're running out of IP addresses. What do we do? And do we need to migrate over to a different subnet? How do we get this how do we unpaint ourselves out of this corner? Well, now what you can do with the network prioritization is you can just go ahead and tack on a second subnet to it. Essentially, tack on another Azure network connection. And so if you want to, and that subnet that has the lower amount of IP addresses, it could be your top one, and then as you're provisioning in that can't provision because it's out of IP addresses, it can just simply go to the next one. And you could, yeah, so very cool from that, like a redundancy, making sure provisioning works and helping to unstick some customers, which is, I think pretty exciting stuff. UDP and short path. Yeah, I'm sure everybody here that's been working with AVD for a bit is familiar with UDP and short path. As far as Windows 365 goes with that, we have Stun available today as a public preview. And that's super cool. I mean, UDP is a far superior protocol, as UDP doesn't care the order that the packets come in, unlike TCP, which is very delicate and persnickety. So that in and of itself is cool. But when you're implementing a UDP short path via Stun, we have the issue with firewalls, because we don't know which port or which IP address this direct connection is going to eventually be made. So you go to your network guide, you say, hey, I need you to open up UDP to every IP address and every port on the public internet. Can you do that for me? And you're going to get laughed out of the room. So not a huge amount of enterprise uptick on that one. So that brings in Turn. Turn is still in private preview on the AVD side. We're getting close. So what Turn does, for folks that may not know, Turn solves that issue, that firewall issue, by carving out a dedicated subnet that relays live in. So the relays will then handle the any traffic. You use the IT network admin and set the firewall rule to point just to that subnet and allow that traffic there. So it's a much more restrictive way of getting UDP out. Again, that work is currently actively under developed, or is in private preview. I don't think I'm at liberty to give the guesstimates, but pretty soon Turn should be coming out. There's a lot of folks asking for that. So we're definitely making improvements in our the protocols that we're communicating, and really trying to improve that end user experience by using UDP. So got
Donna,
that coming. Yo.
Sorry, another question. So does Windows 365 support RDP short path for private networks if there's an ACN in the mix? Back to the private on-prem network?
I'm not sure on that. What is the ACN?
Well, the Azure Connected Network. So if they have line of sight between the Windows client and the private network back to the Windows 365 cloud PC.
So it may. So for the private network, that's the one where if you're on the corp network and it finds that it's quicker just to go over the public network and make the connection, and then it uses that.
If the private network, if the client and the session, and AVD terms, the session host can speak to each other over the private network, you'll use that. Like if you have Express Road.
Gotcha.
You know what? I'm willing to. I suspect that's just a function of enabling the setting on the cloud PC.
It could very well be. I don't know the answer to that one, but it could very well, because a lot of the stuff that's for AVD we're just built right on top of. Mm-hmm. So like when we're talking about the Turn the Turn preview, that's really for AVD. But since we happen to share a lot of that networking infrastructure, most of these things, if it fits AVD, generally speaking, it'll work for Windows 365. So if anybody wants to Google that and see if there's a definitive answer, I'll send you something 3D printed, nothing huge. I don't mind giveaways, but don't know. Good question though. Mm-hmm. And so if anybody has set up Windows 365 and gone through the whitelisting process, you know that there are a ton of FQDNs. We've heard that feedback. We don't like it either. It's just, how the service started. So what's neat, and I think this just got announced this week through Messaging Center, is this URL here, this wildcard info win365microsoft.com. That is where we're going to try to put all of our FQDN named resources behind. So that way it's a one-stop shop, if you will. If you don't already have this URL or this FQDN whitelisted, you absolutely going to want to make sure that it is, because that's the future. So what do we do about the existing ones? Leave them alone. We're starting to get this one stood up. So it's very important that this infra is whitelisted. And in the Messaging Center through future comms from Microsoft, we'll let you know what and when can be removed. That way you can start cleaning up rules. So very important. Very important stuff, should make the future implementations way easier. Licensing, every engineer's least favorite topic. But there's been a lot of cool stuff, just in the general realm of licensing. I think the most impactful one that we had was group-based licensing resize. Well, what does all that mean? In the Windows 365, the specs or the resources that you're providing to the cloud PC or session host is determined by the license, not by a config. So when you apply a 2x8x256 license to a user, that's the cloud PC they get. Now in AVD, you could go ahead and add in, you could change the underlying session host to something more robust. End user never notices, easy peasy. Doesn't quite work that way with Windows 365. So we built a resize function, but up until about halfway through this year, resize was only done on an individual level because we couldn't support group-based licensing because of how license allocation works. There's a bunch of things on the Azure AD side that made this really challenging. And so what you'd have to do, there's some PowerShell scripts that were out there that kind of helped you work it around, but essentially we now actually have an in-console function to allow you to change groups of cloud PCs from one size to another, which is fantastic. A lot of folks, when they're they're early adopters of Windows 365, said, yeah, we're going to go 2x8. That's what we want to do. I said, okay, cool. But then they start finding out that 4x16 may make more sense, or an 8x32. So when we had folks that were trying to resize thousands of these, trying to do that individually, that was a non-starter. So very important. Very important feature that has come out that's made a lot of our larger and earlier deployed customers very happy. On the line of resizing, the way resizing is generally worked is you have your user has a 2x8 license, and then to go to a 4x16, you also had to apply the 4x16 license to them. So just for the sake of easy math, the 2x8 maybe $50 a month. The 4x16 could be $75 a month. So now you had to have $125 worth of licensing applied to the end user in order to make that resize happen. What step-up SKUs do is they really just cost the delta between the source and the destination size. So in this case, for the easy math, it would be $25 for the step-up SKU, because you have the 50 for the 2x8 and then the 25 for the step-up SKU equal to 75 for the 4x16. So what that does is it lowers the cost and the expenditures IT has to spend in order to actually do a resize. So very cool. Glad that one's out there. We're trying to lower that whole TCO, that total cost of ownership. It is a very important function for us. So very glad that one's out there. So right now, if you're looking at step-up licensing, it's only available on the RAM and the CPU side. It's not on storage. So just an FYI. Now, my favorite licensing one, because I actually worked on this, is Windows 365 Frontline. And this in of itself could be a whole hour demo and presentation. So I'm going to try to distill an hour's worth of content into 5 minutes of quick blathering. Windows 365 today, it's one user, one license, one cloud PC, 24/7 access. It's fantastic. But what if you have users that don't need 24/7 access? Shift workers, as a classic example, call center, help desk, those types of folks. That's where Frontline comes into play. Because if your end user doesn't need 24/7 access to a cloud PC, then why do you want to pay 24/7 money in order to make that happen? So how we made this work is we have a special license. And before I go into that, I'd want to just reiterate that this is not multi-session. And it gets very easy to confuse this with multi-session, but it is not multi-session. So what happens is you have one Frontline license that grants you the rights to 3 cloud PCs and to 3 users. So how does this work? Well, the licenses are currently at the tenant level in Azure AD, and when you go ahead and build out your provisioning policy to handle this, what it will do is, when you say that when you point it at your Azure AD group of users, it will consume that many it will provision how many cloud PCs it needs for that particular user base. So now you've got, let's say you've got 30 users in this group, and it will provision you 30 cloud PCs, but you only need 10 licenses to do this. But you can't use the licenses at the same time. So if you say you have 10 licenses, that's enough to cover 30 people and 30 cloud PCs, but only 10 users can only be logged in. And see, that's where the idea of starting to use this for shift comes into play, because you can have a user 1 comes in for shift 1, and they consume the license, they log off, license goes back to the pool. User 2 comes in and logs in, grabs that license, does their thing, logs out, license goes back to the pool. User 3 comes in, grabs the license, and does their thing. So there is a little bit of paying attention to concurrency when you set up Frontline, because you are capped at how many licenses are purchased. So if you wanted to, if you buy 100 licenses, you can only have 100 users on there. And so we've built in concurrency reporting, concurrency alerting into the service to help admins monitor and manage their Frontline estate to make sure that they have just enough licenses. Right now, our guidance is you might want to purchase a few extra licenses to cover your overage, but we're working on that. This Frontline went GA, I believe, in July, and the reporting stuff is some of the first set we started working on. There were other features that were requested throughout the preview process, and those are under active deployment or active development. Sorry, wrong terminology. I kind of feel like I didn't do a great elevator pitch on that one. So that if anybody has any questions, you can ping me after. But the real key takeaway is, from a user cost perspective, with that license, you get 3 users out of a license instead of 1 user for a license. Now the license cost here is is per SKU. So let's say it's 2x8 by 128 for that sake. So if that 2x8 by 128 license costs $50, it now costs $75 for the Frontline, but it also cuts that license cost in half at a per user basis, because now you can squeeze 3 users out of $75 license versus getting 1 user out of a $50 license. So it's a cool way to save costs, and user experience is honestly the same ish as it is with enterprise. Why I said ish is currently its Frontline is supported on Windows and web. I know it's not supported on iOS or Android. I'm unsure on the Mac OS. So it's not available on every form factor or operating system yet, but that's one of the things that we're working on. So, but from a user's perspective, it's largely the same. We've also built, there's always concerns too about how patching and management. So we brought in the ability to power on and power off cloud PCs. So if we need to do patching, we can do that. And what's also neat too is there's guidance on our site that talks about how to build your update rings for frontline. So essentially what happens is as long as your frontline machine's being used consistently, why that's important is when a frontline cloud PC isn't being used, it gets powered off. So as long as it's getting powered on against that policy, Windows updates will apply when the user actually logs off. So the user will never get bugged to restart their computer or apply their updates. We've got a template policy out there that handles all that for us. So as long as the user is using it regularly, they will never get any indication that software updates are even a thing, which I mean, hey, that's pretty cool considering how many software update jokes we've heard over the decades. So one main difference though is where it stands right now when the user logs in, their cloud PC could very well be powered off. So when the user logs in, they'll be greeted with a message, say, we're turning on your machines, may take a couple of minutes, something along those lines. So there may be a delay for the user to log in on that first login of the day. Generally speaking, it should be under 2 minutes, which really isn't bad, all things considered. But still, super cool. This has got a lot of good feedback, a lot of interest. I think this is really going to be a game changer for Windows 365. Any questions on that one? No, that's okay. So off of licensing and onto the admin experience, we have brought in some other nifty features. So we've got move is what we call it, cloud PC move. What does that mean? Well, when you build out your Windows 365 estate, you'll be asked which region do you want to put your cloud PCs in. Well, what if you need to move them? What if you don't want them to be in East US? What if we want them to be in US West 3? That's what move does. Prior to this being here, all you could really do is reprovision, which sets you up for potential user data loss and having to redeploy applications and all of that kind of fun stuff. So where we stand with this one right now is you can make a change in the provisioning policy. As in the provisioning policy, that's actually where you configure what region you're going to place these cloud PCs in. So if you change that from, let's say, East US to Central US, you change that there, you can go ahead and hit this apply regional changes, and that will go ahead and kick the process off to actually move the cloud PCs from East US to US Central. So very handy. There's been plenty of requests to do individual moves. We've heard that data. That feedback has absolutely been heard, and it's something that's being actively investigated. There's plenty of scenarios where moving an individual cloud PC makes sense. Currently, we only have it on bulk, but still, it's a huge step forward. If you've worked with cloud PCs, prior to, I think, May, I think you know that the cloud PC had a hard set prefix CPC dash. Well, now you've got autopilot style naming templates available. So we had plenty of folks that were asking for, we need to fit it into our own corporate naming convention. Well, now we can, as long as it complies with the options that we've given. So you still have like random characters that can put it in there. Instructions are all on there, so you can't use blanks. Not a surprise, but this at least allows you as an admin to not be stuck with the prefix of CPC dash. Just fair warning, if you have cloud PCs that were built before this and you want to use the new one, you may just want to double check any of the rules queries that you have set up within Intune that may be based off of device name, as it was really easy to set up rules and queries based off of If computer name is like CPC wildcard, then you knew exactly how to cloud PC. Now you take that away, so you may have get some errant data if you set that up. So just as a friendly reminder. What we also have brought to the forefront is nested virtualization on a 4x16 SKU. Why is this exciting? Well, because it used to only be available on an 8x32, which that's a pretty pricey SKU. So by bringing virtualization to the 4x16 SKU, that has unlocked a lot of scenarios for developers that are using Windows subsystem for Linux, Windows subsystem for Android, or just plain old good old-fashioned Hyper-V, which, yeah, so I've splashed those ones on there. So you can get more functionality out of an existing license and not have to buy, a humongous license. So those were the big highlights from this year. There's a ton of other, quality of life things. There have been features we brought to GCC and GCCH. Lots of, reporting, alerting, to go through that entire list and try to distill that into a half hour's worth of content is kind of difficult. So I took what I thought was, the biggest and flashiest new features that may be relevant, but there's plenty more out there. So if it's been a while since you've used Windows 365 or trialed it, the amount of new stuff that has come out to it, I think, is just really impressive and warrants a second look. But that's all cool. This is all stuff that's published, but what's coming next? Well, Ignite's coming. There is a lot. I did comb over the public roadmap, and I've actually got that pulled up so I can show you. Most everything that's currently on the public roadmap has already been in public preview. I think with the exception of cross-region disaster recovery and GCC. So most everything has already been listed. So not anything that's super groundbreaking. Your groundbreaking stuff is, of course, going to come from Ignite, which is I'll just drag it over again if you guys want to set reminders for that. It is 15th and 16th of November. I know some of the stuff that's getting announced, and it's super cool. It's game-changing from a development perspective for Windows 365. Can't share it. There's actually a lot of that's embargoed even internally. Like, it's super secret and double super secret NDA. So there's going to be a lot of cool stuff at Ignite. So anyway, I hope that doesn't sound like too much of a cop-out, but in case you're just generally interested and want to keep an eye on our roadmap, the URL for that, I know we've got the little presenting bar hidden up there, but if you go to Microsoft.com, ENUS, Microsoft 365, a roadmap, it'll actually give you a drop-down where you can choose which product you want to work with. You can hit Windows 365. They have them for all sorts. And what's nice is you can at least be able to see and somewhat track these. Now it's not nearly as exciting as the NDA roadmap, but I don't know any of your NDA statuses, so can't share that. So absolutely, please though, stay tuned. There's going to be a ton of cool stuff announced at Ignite, as there always is. So hopefully, this gives a little bit of impetus to maybe try Windows 365. I know this is an AVD group, which again, mad respect. But when we're looking at us being one big happy family from a product perspective, I'm really much reminded of like the early days of Windows 365 and doing presentations, because it was a slam dunk easy one to do. Oh, is it AVD versus Windows 365? Well, it's not versus. They do different things. They have different use cases. If you need a GPU today, go to AVD. If you need fixed fee, you go to Windows 365. Do you have VDI experience? Yeah, check out AVD. Do you not? Cool, Windows 365. So there absolutely is a use case for using both of these together, and that's where I like to talk about with AVD and Windows 365 is it really is a better together story. Classic example, streaming apps. Windows 365 has none. It's desktop only. You want to do remote app, that's absolutely within the realm of AVD. So, hopefully you've learned a couple of things. You've seen where the direction of Windows 365 is going, and you give it a shot in your environment. At this point, I'm open up just to general questions if anybody has any.
Yeah, they're complementary, not competitive products, is the way I
Yes,
like to say.
absolutely. Absolutely. And it's true.
I'm going to stop recording and then we'll open it up for questions.
Okay, very good.